Hey y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and today we are going to recap the Seattle housing market in 2020. What a year 2020 has been. And I don't say that lightly. I know for many, there's been some tragedy. For me personally, there was, and also just a lot of changes and adapting. And a lot of it has to do with COVID-19 coming onto the scene early in the year. And as we look at 2021, I want to go back and kind of take a peek, a little deeper dive into 2020 and what happened here in the Seattle housing market. 2020 started off really strong in the Seattle housing market and all the surrounding areas. And it really looked like it was primed to be one of those years where we returned to or at least got close to being one of the hottest real estate markets in the country again. And for quite some time, 2015 to 17, we were always in that conversation and really leading the charge and as in terms of at least hottest housing markets in the US. And in 2018, mid-year, there was quite a dive that we saw. Part of it was interest rate related, which then made it a lot less affordable to own in Seattle and other higher priced markets. I think other places felt it as well. In fact, I know other places felt it as well in 2018. And a lot of it was due to the increased cost of purchasing with interest rates going up. And even into 2019, it was pretty slow. We saw 8 months straight of decline in the median sales price in Seattle, which was the opposite. We were seeing just consecutive month after month after month, pretty much growth. And then in the end of 2019, we started to see things heating up again. We started seeing multiple offers again. In 2019 and even 2018, we were seeing houses selling for below the asking price, which in the fall is actually fairly common around here, even in a competitive market. And we saw the market starting to heat back up in early 2020. And then COVID-19 came on the scene. And I think it wasn't until cities started shutting things down that we started to see impacts in the housing market. But there was a dramatic impact, at least to the normal rhythm of the market this year in 2020 here in Seattle. And that started with Governor Inslee instituting a stay-home order, stay home, stay safe. And what happened is that everything was pretty much shut down unless people were considered essential. This order ended up being extended multiple times and slowly phasing out, but really continuing, at least in some respect, all the way through 2020 here. But once an order initially went in place, things changed. And the housing market came to, at least for a few days, a screeching halt, with real estate activities being shut down as well. And we'll talk about here as we look at Q2, the shift that was made in the housing market after Governor Inslee, only a couple days in, made real estate essential, but there were lots of changes that happened. Q2 started off really slow, at least in comparison to what we normally see in any given year. And part of that was because the real estate market was shut down completely. And I mentioned earlier it was only for a few days, but there were major changes that were needed as the stay-home order went into effect. And the biggest changes that we saw right away were limits on number of people in the house at a time. At the beginning, it was one agent and one client at a time. And it wasn't the whole client, it was just one person. So if there was a family or multiple people purchasing, it was one person at a time in the house. And the mass showings that we were having multiple different people in the house at the same time showing, different agents, different clients, and that has ended and never has come back. Because of the restrictions. But our market was in a place where there were just lots and lots of people wanting to see houses and everything got scheduled. So we saw decrease in the amount of people in the houses, which is great. We saw masks being worn. At least it was real estate agents were required to wear them at the beginning. And slowly the clients were also required to wear them. Social distancing, 6 feet apart was added in. Open houses were eliminated. Open houses did come back briefly in the summer, but open house privileges were quickly revoked as COVID-19 numbers started coming up again. A few other big shifts included virtual tours. I've always done those for out-of-town clients, but we started doing those for clients that actually live here, that were uncomfortable going into houses and seeing them in person. The 3D virtual walkthroughs as well, the Matterport scans. There are some other scan companies, but Matterport's the primary one. Those became a lot more prevalent. In fact, our MLS actually added some functionality to showcase those virtual tours where previously they weren't allowing that on the database. So I really appreciate and applaud the MLS, Northwest MLS, for adding that. And I'd been using that technology for a while, but it was now easier to get that into the hands of the buyers that were potentially interested. So that also helped with the showings as well. So you could essentially walk through a house without being there. And of course, the video tours and things like that were also enabled on the MLS. So that all got broadcast out to these different websites, which I think really helps consumers in this current market, but also going forward. As far as the housing market is concerned, in Q2, we saw the amount of homes coming on the market dramatically decrease. So typically in the springtime, March, April, May, June, we start to see the most amount of houses coming on the market in the Seattle housing market at least. And we see just lots of people looking to move, sell, buy. And what happened in 2020 is we saw a lot less people putting their houses on the market in the springtime, like 30-40% lower. But we were also seeing 30-40% lower or fewer buyers as well, purchases happening. So there wasn't necessarily a bunch of houses sitting on the market. It wasn't that inventory was continuing to rise. It stayed pretty consistent as there were fewer homes coming on the market, fewer buyers. But we definitely saw a decline in the market, a little bit of a lag, if you want to call it. It's not customary for the springtime. And I think some of it was fear for sellers not wanting to expose themselves potentially to buyers walking through the house. And real estate agents, we were all adjusting to what this looks like and how we can communicate to our clients and also help best protect them. Mortgage rates started declining as COVID-19 started coming onto the scene. We saw the stock market have some pretty drastic drops. The real estate market isn't as reactive, so it takes longer for things to show up. And thankfully, the fear factor doesn't impact the housing market as quickly in the short term. And so we didn't see long-term ramifications of that this year. But we did see the mortgage rates start to drop as a result of this fear. And the mortgage rates and the bond prices are inversely related. So we were seeing bond prices going up, mortgage rates going down. And at this point, mortgage rates have continued to stay down. So they started out in the mid to upper threes this year and are down into the mid to upper twos, I'd say, and probably in the threes, low threes at the highest right now. But people were starting to make decisions with their home. Am I going to refinance right now with these record low rates, which they continued to go down, but in the spring they were the lowest they'd ever been. I capitalized on that. I refinanced my house. But what that means for somebody who is owning a home is it usually takes about a year of living in your house, depending on how much of a rate decrease you got, to start to see the benefit of that. There's costs associated with refinancing. So people were making decisions to refinance versus purchase. And either way, they had to face this decision. So what happened is when we saw more buyers start coming back into the market, because they were thinking, you know what? I don't like my house anymore. Or with the new restrictions, maybe working from home became more normal. And they started to see this is going to be longer term. And if I'm stuck in my house and I can't go anywhere, I really don't like my house. Maybe people settled initially on what they wanted ultimately because, this isn't forever. This is just for a short term. I'm not here that much. But once you're there all the time, you don't have an office. All of a sudden that open concept that was so popular, I got to have my own space. I have to have somewhere to work. My spouse needs to have somewhere to work. My kids need somewhere to play. Whatever it was for people, there was a decision point. And so there were a lot of buyers that were getting into the market to purchase when there was still not enough homes on the market. And that was kind of towards the end of this springtime. And we started to see more buyers in the market and eventually more listings coming on as well. I think as a result too of those buyers that purchased, right? They had a house to sell. But we started to see the amount of homes on the market rising into the end of June as people were starting to feel more confident and okay and comfortable with people coming into their home. I think we were also just seeing a little bit of optimism as we started to head into the summer. The weather's getting nicer. People are getting outside and not cooped up anymore. And by the end of June, we were starting to see more normal buyer and seller activity as we headed into the summer. For the sake of this video, I lumped Q3 and Q4 together here because really Q3 and Q4 have blended together as we've headed into the end of 2020 here. In the springtime, we saw an unusually low amount of homes coming on the market and an unusually and seasonally low amount of buyer activity. In the summer and into the fall, really all the way through November so far, we've seen a dramatic increase in the amount of homes coming on the market and also the amount of buyers in the market. And I think a big part of this is because sellers delayed putting their house on the market in the springtime. The ones that were maybe afraid to do so, they were delaying putting their house on the market until the fall. And weather's still good in the fall and there's still buyers out in the market, obviously at this point. And it was a place where they felt a little bit more confident. We also saw a bunch of buyers that maybe purchased houses in the summertime that were now putting their houses on the market in the fall. So we saw a huge, massive number of houses coming on the market in September, October, November even, when we don't normally see those big of numbers. Now we have seen, as the year is starting to come to a close, a decline in that massive number of new listings coming on the market. And I think as we look back in a couple weeks at the December data, that we'll see that there were a substantially lower number of homes coming on the market than did in November and then also October. I think we will see a larger number of homes coming on the market this December maybe than normal, but it won't be as dramatic as we've been seeing with some of the other months this year. And despite this large amount of inventory coming on the market and lots of new homes, again, seasonally large numbers of homes coming on the market, we've seen just as many buyers, actually more buyers in the market. And so we've continued to see this activity that has been unprecedented for this time of year. And the homes that are on the market are getting sold in days. We're seeing super, super low days on market across the board in Seattle and all the surrounding areas. And I think a big part of that is the low interest rates. And I've mentioned this in the video already a few times. The interest rates are at record lows right now. And so there are a lot of buyers out there looking to capitalize on that. But what's also happened is the inventory and the supply of homes for sale has been dropping every single month. And right now in Seattle and Bellevue, we're seeing right around a month of inventory of homes on the market. But in the suburbs, if you go out into the suburbs in King County or in Snohomish County, you're seeing really, really low, like half a month, a couple weeks, even less than a couple weeks of homes available. So there's just not that much to sell. And the competition is starting to look like it did in 2015, 16, 17, into 2018. Multiple offers, all contingencies removed, earnest money released. The things that we haven't really included in offers over the last few years for buyers. Buyers have really been able to not really get a discount necessarily, although a little bit in 2018 and 19, but they've been able to make offers that are a little bit more favorable for themselves with some of the standard contingencies and inspection periods. But we're seeing pre-inspections again. We're seeing waived financing contingencies and appraisal contingencies. If you're not as familiar with this, it's essentially buyers putting their earnest money, their good faith deposit at risk in order to make themselves stand out to sellers. And where we may be seeing just barely over asking price offers, and those offers we're winning, we're starting to see 3, 5, 10, 15, even 20% over asking on certain houses. So the competition level has picked up dramatically, and surprisingly, it's at the end of the year where we normally see a discount even below the listing price on average this time of year, even in a hot market. But right now we're seeing above asking price on average here in the city and surrounding areas as we head into 2021. As we wrap up 2020, we find ourselves in a highly competitive market here in the Seattle area. And we also find ourselves in the middle of another shutdown. Right before Thanksgiving, the governor ordered that gatherings be limited. And it's a modified version of what we saw back in the spring, but a lot of businesses have closed down, specifically restaurants and athletic clubs, things like that. And we're seeing this again extended, so all the way until January. And at this point, the housing market has continued to march on. I think real estate was in a good spot to be able to adapt to some of these changes and restrictions. And nothing new was added to our plate as we headed into this new shutdown, aside from open houses again being canceled. So I think as we head into 2021, we're going to continue to see this really, really depressed and suppressed inventory level. And I think that's going to continue to fuel price growth and competition as we head into 2021. But that is a topic for another video. Thanks so much for watching this video recapping the housing market and real estate market here in the Seattle area. I know 2020 has been a crazy year, but hopefully as we head into 2021, we're going to be able to return to a little bit more normalcy in this next year. Now, if you watch this video all the way to the end, I know that there was some value or at least some entertainment maybe. I don't know, I'm not too funny in these videos. But if you would like to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to my channel where I talk about the housing market every single month and talk about other things related to real estate that might be helpful for you as a homeowner, a buyer, or a seller.